foolish mortals.
Hello there. Are you insane? Get out of here!
Remain seated with your seatbelt fastened.
Right, off you go.
Welcome to Average Joe Orlando. Hello, theme park goers. Welcome to another episode of Average Joe Orlando, and today another not so average list. I'm gonna piggyback off my recent Disneyland trip and talk about some of my favorite Disneyland rides. Now, this is my first time there in almost 6 years. I went in 2016 for my first ever time to Disneyland. To give a little background, been to Disney World many times. After that, got to go to Disneyland Paris once. So Disneyland, the OG, became my third ever Disneyland park. Since going there in 2016, I returned to Disneyland Paris. I also got to finally see Tokyo Disney. Still have 2 more Disney parks on my list, so still have to do Hong Kong and Shanghai. But I did get to go pre-COVID, since that's how we measure time nowadays. 2019, I went and got to see it all again, and now it's been years, so I was overdue for a weekend, and it was actually one of those last-minute weekend trips. A few days beforehand, looked at flights, had miles, and said, let's go, and literally just flew out for the weekend to go to Disneyland because I was craving the happiest place on earth. Or the most magical? No, Florida is, I guess, the most magical, or so they say. But, yeah, it's the OG. And it was busy. Weekends are always busy. I think it's always just busy at Disneyland nowadays. I don't know what's going on with that. But it was busy. Originally, I was thinking, should I break this down into the 2 parks? Because they do have the 2 parks, but they are back-to-back. But I went through my list of things I had to do and the things I did more than once, and wanted to put together my favorite list. Even though there are just so many rides at Disneyland, and it was really busy, I definitely was able to utilize single rider a lot, which was great. They do a very makeshift kind of single rider out there, but it totally works. I know I went up to the Matterhorn. I'm like, do you have one? They're like, yeah, go up the exit. I was like, excuse me? And then they hand you like a slip, and then they kind of like funnel you into these different ways, but it totally works. And for the Matterhorn, totally worth it because you're sitting one by one anyway, so why not? Same thing, Space Mountain. There was like a special entrance by the exit, and then they walked you through. It was really interesting, but they totally, they make it work for their single riders, and it's definitely, I cut down a lot of time. I did, for my first ever time, try Lightning Lane out there, which apparently works differently than the one in Florida. I think I just refused to ever pay for it since it was free back in the day, FastPass, and in Florida I have the gift of not going during busy time, but since I was only there for a few days, I was like, let me pay for it. And I actually was able to maximize it since I'm only one person, and a lot of the locals out there don't seem to use it, so I definitely used it. They also comes with a photo pass for the day, which is a cool little perk. I didn't use that because I didn't take any photos of just myself, but yeah, I did get to experience a lot of rides, so let's talk about those rides. And my first one should come to no surprise, Indiana Jones. So Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye is very similar to my favorite soon-to-be extinct attraction, Dinosaur, out here in Florida. They also have a version of this ride, the Crystal Skull, not related to the movie, in Tokyo Disney Sea. And this ride is just crazy. It's literally like, you look at it and you're like, wow, Dinosaur's track is like this big. And it's basically like if you ride Dinosaur, but they have a budget. Because if you know Dinosaur, you go in the first scene, and you're like, wow, and then you turn the corner and everything's in the dark, and that's because the budget got cut. Still a great ride, but Indiana Jones is just wild. You're in that giant room, and the fire shooting everywhere, and then the finale scene with the boulder coming towards you. So I do have bad news, though. This ride goes down a lot, and that's the worst part about this ride. I booked a Lightning Lane for this, and when I went to go, they go, the ride's down, but we're going to give you a multi-pass, which is good for any ride, but it could also be good for this ride. So then I went ahead and I booked another one for that ride so I could use my multi-pass other places. So I finally went when it reopened. I went on the ride. It's a little strange because this ride is kind of built like outside the park, so the queue is just like, it's like a long hallway that takes forever to get to, but worth it. And I got on the ride, and we were almost off the ride, and I noticed the car in front of us was really close, and we stopped. And then I'm like, well, we shouldn't be doing this. I know rides. And then it just stopped completely. And an announcement came on, and we sat in the dark, and the ride like bucked you like a bull. Because you know how that ride like bounces you around? Literally for almost 5 minutes, the ride just was like boom, 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 boom. And just kind of like as if it was like making noises and driving as if it was in, I guess, a certain mode. It was nauseating finally it's shut off and all the lights came on and we just sat there, and then they made announcements. They came through and walked and go, everybody's good. Then it made more announcements that they were going to restart. Then it never restarted. Then they made more announcements that they were evacing. It took us over 40 minutes before we even got off the vehicle, which to me is absurd and a little unacceptable, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, we were stopped in a boring scene where like it was completely dark, so it felt like Dinosaur. But then we got off the ride, and the cool part was they walked us off, and we got to walk to the part with the darts towards the end, and then you walk under the giant boulder scene. So that room is neat because the ride does not go backwards. And if you've ever been on Indiana Jones, you go, Indiana Jones is hanging there, and he's like, back up, and it looks like you're backing up, and then the boulder comes towards you, and you go under. And how that works is really the room around you goes forwards to make it feel like you're going backwards. The whole room moves, and then the boulder rolls towards you on a track, or I guess it's like pushed. I don't really know how that works. And then you go down. So it's fascinating. So to walk that was really neat. I'm sitting there like, all right, this was worth it. And then we got another multi-pass lightning lane. So that was cool. And then I finally got to ride it, and then it worked. And then I did it, I think, one more time at the end of my trip, and it stopped at the last room, like right after the boulder, and we just sat there and it got bucked around again. I was like, oh God, not again. So I think I had my fill of Indiana Jones riding it 2.5 times. My next ride is completely different than that. Roger Rabbit Cartoon Spin. And the reason I like this is because it's so unique, and I can't believe it's still there it was actually really busy. They have changed it a little bit. There is a version in Tokyo still. However, it's cool. It's like the teacup ride on a dark ride track. So it's like weird. It's goofy. It reminds me of the old Roger Rabbit movie, which is based off of, which a lot of people don't even know. So to me, it's cool just because we don't have it in Florida. Just like we don't have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in Florida. Now, this usually becomes my first ride that I do when I go to Disneyland. Last time, as soon as I got there, I said, we have to ride Mr. Toad, and ran right to it. I did rope drop at Disneyland. It was very busy. They let you in about I think it was 30 minutes early, and you kind of stand on Main Street, and it was packed. And then they play some music, and then everybody runs. And I noticed everybody was running probably towards the same things. I'm sure they were going to Rise of the Resistance, which I did not do because I don't have any interest in it. And I've done it in Florida, and even doing it here, I'm like, okay, not my jam. A lot of people probably run to Indiana Jones. I don't love running at rope drop. 1, because you should not run in the theme parks. It's not safe. And 2, because that's usually when the rides get packed. Everybody runs to it. And then if you go an hour later, it's a little less busy. And I was doing Lightning Lane. So I was like, what I did and my focus, and I have a full list of what I did. I should look it up. I actually wrote down what I did for the whole day. But how do you basically do a bunch of rides that are going to get a little busier that don't have Lightning Lane, and then do Lightning Lane after? So my whole game plan was knock out all those rides, do those Fantasyland rides that don't have Lightning Lane. So I literally walked quickly to Snow White, Mr. Toad, Pinocchio. I have to look at my list. I basically just knocked out all those quick ones. Everybody else was running to Peter Pan, and that line for Peter Pan was 40 minutes at opening. So I'm like, in those 40 minutes while you're waiting for Peter Pan, you can knock out 3 or 4 rides, and that's what I did. And then I started playing with the Lightning Lane. I was able to do Haunted Mansion. I was able to do Pirates, all walk-ons, before I even had to use my first Lightning Lane, which was great. But I digress. Mr. Toad became my second ride. I find this ride fascinating because it only takes 2 cast members to run, and one of them is sitting down, and there's no barrier gates. So coming from Disney World, where it's 20 cast members for one small ride, barrier gates, everything like that, you literally just walk up, sit in a car, and you go. And it's so fun. It's so weird, the ride. If you don't know what the ride, you get hit by a train, and you go to hell at the end. It's bizarre. It's strange. It's dated, and it's so fun, and it's so unique. And we used to have it here at Disney World, but they replaced it with the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Boo. But there in Disneyland, both those rides can live together in harmony, as they should. My next ride is fun. If you like a good back adjustment or need to pass a kidney stone, is the Matterhorn. Now, the Matterhorn, I remember my first trip ever going, I was like, I have to ride this. This is from those old VHS tapes where they do Zippity Doo-Dah, and all the kids are on it, and I remember going, that looks fun. I want to ride that ride. And then going as an adult and riding it, you go, oh my gosh, that's so painful. But I rode it numerous times this trip, and it's so unique and different. And it's rough. Don't get me wrong. It's very rough. I saw reports that I guess like iPhone settings, if you had it, were detecting you were in a car accident and calling 911 on your phone because it's that rough. Mine didn't do that, which I don't know why my iPhone doesn't do that, but it's fine. But it was cool, and it's different, and they have that single rider's line that really helps the line move, and it's great. Yeah, I really, really like the Matterhorn. If you have back problems, maybe skip it. It is definitely a rough one, but they have updated it throughout the years with the Yeti. And the Yeti, the original one, is actually in the collector's exhibit after the pre-show of Guardians of the Galaxy. So the old one is sitting in there, and then they have that new one, which is really impressive inside the ride. My next ride's going to be Pirates of the Caribbean. And the reason this is on the list, because this is the original, and which is cool because it's the last attraction that Walt actually overlooked and oversaw and got to work on, which is also just the history and the heritage about Disneyland is my favorite thing. But it's fantastic, and it's the original. And you walk in, and you're like in like a house, it looks like, but there's a boat going by. And in my first time on this, like it just keeps going and going. And you're like, well, when are we actually going to see like Barbossa and the whole opening scene? And it takes you a long time. You go through the Blue Bayou restaurant, and then you go down some drops, and then you get wet, unfortunately, which I did, and it was a little cold. And it was just cool, and it's a long ride. And then it ends with this whole scene that we don't have either, where they're all shooting at each other with the gunpowder, and then you go up again. So to me, this is the best Pirates. The one in Paris is very cool. The one in Tokyo was very similar to this, but to me, this is the last one that Walt worked on. It's such a unique location, being in the New Orleans Square area. Well, I guess it's on the border of New Orleans Square and Adventureland, but I think it's considered New Orleans Square. It's great, and to me, it's just that really unique old Disney ride. And they have other great rides in the park. Haunted Mansion is great. However, it's a little shorter. I think I like Florida's better. Big Thunder's great. We have that in Florida. I think it's a little similar. I think Paris has the best Big Thunder, actually. They have a lot of great rides. And their Space Mountain is different than ours. But, you know, it's a Space Mountain. This is just, that's that Walt, and that's that Disney touch. And that's the one that I really like. I'm going to hop over to the other park, which, unlike Disney World, does not take 20 to 30 minutes to get to. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds to get to, because it's literally right across the Esplanade. I'm saying that wrong. But over across the way at Disney's California Adventure. Let's talk about some of my favorite rides over there, starting with Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, Guardians, to me at least, was one of them that I was very upset that they were building or retheming. How dare you get rid of Tower of Terror? That is the best ride. Everybody loves Tower of Terror. Then I rode it, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Now, I still hope they don't get rid of the one in Florida. It is cool to have different rides. I have a real issue when Disney copy and paste the same ride. That's why I had no interest in going to Star Wars Land, because I'm like, I've been to this one. It's the exact same thing in Florida. Why did I fly across the country to go to something that I could do in my own backyard? To me, there's so many different stories with Star Wars. They should have built it as a different planet with a different timeline. Look at me talking like I know Star Wars. But instead, they did the lazy and cheap thing and just copy and pasted it. So I like that Guardians is similar but different than Tower of Terror, and I like it gives you an option to go on it. If it was the general Tower of Terror, would I have waited long or got a lightning lane? No. This line was crazy the entire trip. If you don't know the storyline, you are in... It's the Collectors. I don't know much about Marvel either. It's a collector. It's Benicio del Toro. And you go into the Collector's exhibit, and it's cool because it's like the old Tower of Terror lobby, but they have all these different things you can look at. And like in one of the boxes is Figment, and he has all these different collections on display. And his newest display is the Guardians of the Galaxy, and you get to go see them in a gantry lift. And the only way to open the doors is by raising, that you need access is by raising your hands, and it scans your hands. And then Rocket takes over, as he normally does, blah, blah, blah. And he broke out, and he needs our hands to unlock the doors since his won't scan. And you go up, and everyone is different because they do different music. And it's fun because the music just keeps going, and it bobs you up and down. The screen's open. It's a long ride. I forgot how long. I think the entire ride, everybody was laughing. I'm so bummed out I only got to ride this once because it was so busy and it was so hard to get a lightning lane for. It was one of them that kept booking up for the end of the day, and then when can you get your time, and then you have to go back there, and so, so it was just a tough one, and I did not want to wait 90 minutes to 120 minutes for one ride. So I got to ride this once during my trip, unfortunately, and I think I was like one of the parts that I laughed at most on the trip. It was so fun. My next up is the Incredicoaster. The Incredicoaster is the California Screamin', I believe was the original name, which is kind of just a basic coaster. However, you forget, it's super long. And they did a great layover with the Incredibles. When it first came out, I remember ever being like, there's no animatronics, everything's stagnant. But it's a fun storyline. So you're supposed to be going on this Incredicoaster, and Edna's watching Jack Jack, and he disappears, and all of them have to go and get Jack Jack back. So the storyline is fun, the music is fun, the audio is fun, and it's a long coaster. You go out, you go back, you out, you go back. Pixar Pier is just a really great overlay for the Paradise Pier section of the park. Paradise Pier section of the Pixar Pier of the park. Wow. My only complaint is that there's a Jessie carousel. First off, Jessie, just like the worst character. And then why is it not a Wall-E carousel? Like, we already have a Toy Story ride. We need more other attractions. You have an Inside Out ride. You have 2 Toy Story rides and an Incredibles ride. Come on, where's all the others at? You can make it an Up carousel, a mixture of all the characters. I'm going on a tangent. But the Incredicoaster, definitely a favorite for that park. Another favorite for the park, which I guess they could move to the Pixar area, but I don't think they need to nor have the space, is the Monsters, Inc. ride. To me, the Monsters, Inc. ride is just fun. There is a Monsters, Inc. ride, the Hide and Go Seek or Ride and Go Seek over in Tokyo, which is definitely better because Tokyo spends a lot more money on it. That one in Tokyo is a flashlight tag, and all the animatronics move and talk. This one is more a basic dark ride where the animatronics kind of just do simple head movements or arm movements. So it's definitely a smaller, low-budget ride. However, it's really fun. If you don't know the history of the ride was opened with the park as a different ride called Superstar Limo, which was, if you look it up on YouTube, you wonder, how did this ride even happen? It's terrible. But you're supposed to be a celebrity going to your movie premiere, and there's animatronics of other celebrities. And if you watch it now, you're like, what the heck? Like, here is Regis Philbin. And you're like, what? Funny man, Drew Carey. And they all come up, Jackie Chan. And they have repurposed the entire attraction to make it into this ride. And all the celebrities, they didn't even change how their body is because, those like CDC guys or whatever, the ones in the yellow, they repurposed it. So there's one that like is handing out star maps. This one's handing out, I think, brochures to find Boo. And then there's one that comes up and it clearly is doing like a move kind of. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like you could match them up. There are YouTube videos where they matched up where the old animatronics are. And now instead of in a limo, you're in a taxi and you're going through Monstropolis. So it's a layover of a terrible ride that they made it into a really fun ride. And I just love how unique it is. I hope they never get rid of it. And if they do, they should just send it over to Orlando since they're getting rid of the Muppets. Bitter party of one over here. And they could just put that over in the former Muppets courtyard and put it over here because we could use more rides anyway. My next ride is a super unique one. Definitely an off-the-shelf kind of attraction that was built for the park, and they just kind of plopped it in there, but it totally works. It's the Golden Zephyr. First off, the spiel of it is so fun. It's like, hello, fly boys and girls, let's all ride. I'm doing a terrible job, but it's a real humdinger. That's how the spiel is. So it's fun just for that. And then you hop on and it just spins in a circle, but they go out really far and there's no door, which is fascinating. It was just cool. It's a fun, unique ride. It's down a lot for wind. So it's one of them that you really have to like try to hop on. It also closes during World of Color. But it was a really fun, unique ride that I don't think I've ever been on. And that's why it's making my list, because I've never seen something. It feels like an old-timey kind of ride that you never got to do. But you can do it at Disney's California Adventure. That's over on the, I want to say Paradise Pier section. I think they still call it Paradise Pier. Sure. And my last, but definitely not least ride is the Cars ride called Radiator Springs Racers. Now this ride just feels like Disney gave them whatever budget they wanted, and they just got to run with it. The only thing better than the Cars ride during the day is the Cars ride at night. It's beautiful. Like the lighting package, you literally feel like you are in Radiator Springs. The entire section is so detailed, so like insane what they did with it. And then you go on the ride, and it's so good. It's one of those rides that, like Indiana Jones, I wish I would get evacuated off of it just so I could walk through what the track's like. I got to do this a few times during the trip. I did it every time with single rider. It wasn't included on the Lightning Lane multi-pass. It was one of them that you have to pay for like it individually. And I'm not paying $20-something to go on a ride. That ain't going to happen. So I did the single riders, and it moved extremely quickly. Same ride system as Test Track, except it's fun. And you race at the end, which is really cool. And there's 2 different tracks at the end. So you start off on, your casual ride into Radiator Springs, and then you speed up, and then you're going to be racers for the day, and you go from either right or left, and so it breaks you up. So I got to experience both sides. You go to like Ramon's shop, and they do the painting, or you go over to the Guido, and he does the pit stop thing and fixes your tires, I guess. And then you race at the end. So during the day is great. At night is great. That whole land is great. Cars is definitely not my favorite franchise. I didn't even see the third one. I don't remember the second one, actually. Yeah, Cars is fine. Cars Land is fantastic. Apparently the quick service there, the flows is very good. Everybody kept going over to the Cozy Cone. It was packed. At night, the neon light package is great. That last night that I was there in Disneyland, I was all sad. I'm like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to say goodbye. So I did just a walk of California Adventure to say goodbye to the park. And as I was there, I was like, let me go hop on the Cars ride. And that was my last ride as I left and said goodbye to Disneyland. Or as they always say, we don't say goodbye. We say see you real soon. But anyway, there's a lot of great rides at Disneyland. There's a lot of rides in general. Some honorable mentions, definitely. The Alice in Wonderland ride over at Disneyland. It's a cool dark ride that they have updated. Some people like the Finding Nemo ride. I personally don't. I get a little claustrophobic in there, but it is a very unique ride. Plus, we never got to experience 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, so one of those that are really neat. Yeah, and their Space Mountain over there is just wild. It's my first time that I got to do it when it wasn't the Hyperspace Mountain layover, just the regular Space Mountain. So that was a nice change and treat. Also, their Buzz Lightyear was better than the one in Florida. Everything over there was better than the one in Florida. It was just great. Their rides are great. Excited to see what else they're going to do with their Disneyland Forward project. Curious where they're going to expand and how it's going to grow. But they could definitely use the capacity because that park was busy. But hey, good for them. They're doing well. And with that, I will see you at the parks.
Thanks for taking a ride with Average Joe Orlando.
You made it! I knew you would.
Is everyone okay? Hope you still want to open an account.
Say cheese! See you later!
Thanks, everybody. You were brilliant.
At this time, gather up your personal belongings and take your small grubs by their grubby little hands as you exit. Thank you.